You guys ready? It is 7 p.m. So I will call to order the Richfield Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of August 19th, 2024. And then we'll start with the open forum. So each speaker is to keep their comment period to 3 minutes to allow for sufficient time for others. Comments are always an opportunity to address the HRA. You can refer to the HRA agenda and minutes webpage for additional ways to submit comments. There's no one here in front of us, but you can always call into the open forum by dialing 1-415-655-0001 and use webinar access code 2631-553-4069 with the password 1234. Is anyone calling in?
No callers yet.
Okay. If anyone does, always feel free to interrupt us. We will move on then to approval of the minutes of 1, the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of June 17th, 2024, and 2, the special Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of July 9th, 2024. Is there an approval of the minutes?
So moved to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. We will start with item number 1, the HRA budget presentation, and I will send it over to Executive Director Pillman.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vreese-Daniels and Commission. Michelle, if you would mind switching over to our presentation here. Great. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 2024 revised and 2025 proposed HRA budget. As a reminder, the mission of the HRA is to assist in keeping residential and commercial areas of the city vital, maintaining property values, and serving the diverse housing and economic needs of homeowners, renters, and the business community. Our areas of focus are listed on this slide, but I always like to say that the HRA, to a significant degree, is really responsible for the growth, the vitality, and the competitive position of the city. Are we having
I found it.
trouble with our computers?
We're trying to find the switches, sorry.
Got it. That's okay. Did we find them?
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, HRA is really responsible for the growth, the vitality, and competitive position of the community. And the programs that are initiated and administered by the HRA are what help to do that. The city portion of the Community Development Department's budget, which is approved by the City Council, is largely focused on regulatory items. It's crafting and administering a regulatory framework like the zoning code, administering the building code. The HRA and the EDA portions of our work are about strategic investments in our community. Oh, just a second. Okay, there we go. I'd like to start with the staff. The HRA is staffed by the Community Development Department and pays at least 50% of the salaries of 10 of our 20 employees. Some of that staff time is reimbursed by HUD, for instance, for the administration of the Housing Choice Voucher or Section 8 program. Additionally, the HRA pays a small portion of the planning staff salaries, as well as the city manager and finance staff who support our work. So moving into the budgets, the HRA budget varies significantly from year to year for several reasons, and the fluctuations in these numbers can be easily misunderstood, so I want to cover that. First, our work doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens alongside private investment, and often opportunities present themselves that we weren't able to predict when we were putting together the future year's budget. Increases often indicate that we've been able to utilize some of our pooled TIF to invest in elsewhere in the community, or that other funding sources or opportunities have arisen. Also, the budget reflects pass-through funding, things like federal Section 8 dollars and grant money. The numbers in this chart are showing expenditures only, not revenues. The revised proposal represents a 42% increase over adopted. General admin expenses, however, are down in 2024 because of a staff vacancy. I'll cover that more on the following slide. There's also been a shift in funds that influences the 2024 revised budget. Woodlake Terrace utility work and home ownership grants have carried over, and rental housing support funds that weren't spent in 2023 have also been moved into the 2024 revised budget. For 2025, or here, let's cover 2024. Some of those major increases, again, are due to property acquisitions, like the purchase of 6525 Penn Avenue, the taxes and closing costs for the land that was donated to us at Highway 77 and Interstate 494, the former Metro Sales properties. We had some increased maintenance costs for HRA-owned properties, some trees that needed to be taken down, graffiti on some of those buildings, and then deteriorating exteriors that we needed to address. And then, as I just mentioned, the shift in some of those funds that weren't spent in 2023. So for 2025, funding levels are anticipated at roughly the same amount. Instead of property purchases, like you're seeing in the 2024 revised budget, we're hoping for both Astor Commons and Penn Station to move forward so that we can contribute to the affordability of those projects. And that would be about $1.2 million between the two projects. So that's why that funding level is staying up at that higher level. There's also a significant increase in personnel costs in 2025, and that's as we start to see the impacts of the comp and class study and increasing insurance costs. One thing I'll just forecast here is that personnel costs are up almost 7% in the HRA. They're actually up significantly higher in the EDA as we focus more of our work on the business community to keep with, in keeping with the strategic plan. So just forecasting the next budget presentation I'll give. So this is a slide where I kind of like to break down into some larger simplified buckets how the HRA, where HRA money comes from and how we spend that money. I think it helps to understand just the overall picture. So the top half of the page is intended to show you where the money is coming from. The first line, taxes, that's the amount collected through the levy, obviously. But last year we also included in that line money generated through the new 0.25 Metro sales tax for affordable housing, also known as LAHA, or Local Affordable Housing Aid. That money is now shown in the intergovernmental revenues total. It's considered state aid, so that's why it's been moved into that line. So that's why you see the drop. The money is still there, it's just in a different line item. Intergovernmental revenues, those are funds from other government units. The majority is from HUD to fund the Section 8 program. There's also CDBG, grants, and now, like I said, LAHA sales tax money. And just to mention, the amount coming in from that sales tax is actually down from what the state had projected for 2024. Instead of the $453,000 that they were initially projecting for us, we're getting approximately $230,000. So that lower amount is showing up in intergovernmental revenues. This was only a partial year collection for that sales tax. So in 2025, we've bumped that number back up closer to the initial projection and are estimating $400,000. For miscellaneous revenues, those are things like loan repayments, land sales, investment earnings, and also the value of new assets on our books. So the significant increase here is the donated land at 1620 and 1640 78th Street. You'll remember that that property was valued at about $4.2 million. And so that isn't technically revenue coming in, but it's an asset held for resale now by the HRA. And so that shows up as funding for us in this line item. Transfers, that's money that's being brought in from other funds, like tax increment coming into the Housing and Redevelopment Fund from contributing districts. It's also HRA general fund transfers to fund programs in different areas of the budget. So it's not necessarily new money, but sometimes it's money coming out of a fund that we were holding, and now we're finally programming. So in 2024, you see a large increase as we recoup the overpayment dollars that had gone to Best Buy, and that's been completed now. We've recouped that entire amount. And in 2025, we're budgeting for a large transfer from the temporary spending plan to the special legislation affordable housing pot of money for those affordable projects on Portland and Penn Avenue. So moving on to the chart at the bottom of the slide, this is again what the HRA spends money on. Personnel, this line item is strictly staff costs. And while they are slightly down in 2024, as I mentioned, there's a significant increase in 2025 as comp and class comes on. Administration, those are things like rent, the rent we pay for building costs, insurance, equipment. It's also professional development costs for staff. And then programs, that's a large bucket just to show you that this is the money that we are taking and programming out into the community. This is the money that we're taking and doing the good work that you have charged us with.
Chair, could I ask a question? On the last slide, my question, we've heard about the, I think 10% that the HRA can charge for administering the TIF districts. Where does that show up? Is that taxes or is that miscellaneous revenue?
That actually, I'd have to look back. That is not going to show up. That's a great question, and I'll have to go back and look and get you that answer.
Okay. My other just general question, which also, it's fine if you have to get back to me. I was curious in general, the split of personnel costs between the city and the HRA. Is that just kind of individually negotiated within Ridgefield and this is the way we decide to do it? Or is there like a rule that your hours per week need to be directly compensated? I'm just wondering, because of this reduction in TIF in the future, is it possible to simply shift some of those staff costs to the city side of it and property taxes? Or does it have to be because you, Melissa, spend 18 hours a week on HRA items that portion of your salary must come from the HRA?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, it's individually decided by the cities.
Okay.
In terms of the TIF administration funds, that can only be used for things that are actually related to TIF administration. So we do want to keep track of HRA staff hours in that way to make sure that we're utilizing funds that are coming in through those TIF districts. But in terms of the rest of our funding of staff, it could be entirely funded by the city, which it is in some cities, or entirely funded by the HRA. That's a city choice. And because of those TIF districts that are looking to roll off in the next couple of years and a decrease in the admin dollars, it's a conversation that we're having with the city manager and the finance director regularly to make sure we know what we're projecting for the future. Right now, we're actually projecting that the TIF districts that will remain will be enough to continue to fund the HRA at these levels, but the city is planning in the event that that doesn't happen to hold some money to cover HRA staff costs.
Okay, thanks.
And I processed a little bit, and the TIF admin money that you're discussing, the 10%, is going to show up in the taxes, just like it is. That's just like the Housing and Redevelopment Fund money. It is pulled out afterward. Okay, so moving on to the levy. This is a history of the amount that the HRA has levied over time. Since 2019, we have not maximized the levy. We used to. That hasn't been our recommendation for the last several years. You might wonder why this, with the significant new funding coming in from these different sources like LAHA and the sales tax money and the Bring It Home program that I'll talk about in a little bit, why we would need to increase the levy at all. And while the legislature has approved significant money for programs, they have not necessarily approved money for the administration of those programs. And so as the HRA tries to take on that additional work and program those funds, sometimes we are ending up sending out programs to be administered by others. For instance, CEE is administering some additional loan programs for us now to free up staff time. That's actually a little bit more expensive. So we're continuing to increase the levy to make sure that we can continue to fund all of those programs.
Thank you for including the average impact to the homeowner. Is that an increase or is that the average total?
Thank you, that is the increase.
Okay.
Yes, so that is the increase that the average homeowner would see in 2025. It would be $1.38 for the year. The levy that we are proposing, the levy increase, is a 3% levy increase, and that is well below the maximum allowed. The levy would be, sorry, turn my page, $720,000. The maximum is $936,000.
Sure. Is the max levy determined by like our tax base, or is that based on our previous, like, does us not maxing out prevent us from maximizing in a future year, or what is the max levy based on, I guess?
Sure, there's a formula that's set by the state. It's a percentage of your net tax capacity.
Okay.
And so that's calculated each year after values come in from the county.
Okay, so other than the fact that we are not taking in the maximum theoretical money this year, we're not limiting ourselves to go to the max in the future year if they
That's
call for
correct.
that. Okay.
So covering highlights of our work from 2024 thus far, and talking about some of the factors that are playing into that revised budget for 24 and 25. With the retirement of our housing specialist, Brian Derwachter, at the end of 2023, that left us with a vacancy for the first part of 2024. But Hillary Lovelace has filled that, and we are back to full strength, so that's exciting. Section 8 staff has been recognized for exceptional administration of the Housing Choice Voucher Program by HUD. Very exciting for us. We always knew they were wonderful, but it's great to have HUD recognize that too. Our first-time homebuyers program continued to utilize, our first-time home buyers continued to utilize our first-time homebuyer program. Typically, the HRA issues 10 to 11 loans annually. In 2024, 11 loans were issued by the end of June. So additional funding in the revised budget will provide for 5 to 6 more loans this year. Then we've got the duplex demonstration projects, and through our revised guidelines, our zoning guidelines, we're now working to develop a duplex or maybe even 2 on HRA lots. This is demonstrating how our zoning code can work in the community, those new zoning allowances. Those projects are proving to be very challenging financially, and we are budgeting for the possibility of additional assistance that we might need to help those projects along. That would be one instance where we could potentially use those spending plan dollars that were identified a couple of years ago. Ongoing work to evaluate our current housing programs is happening. In 2022 and 23, we made modest changes to Richfield Rediscovered and Transformation programs. And this year, we're proposing some changes to our down payment assistance program to make sure that we're addressing the largest needs. The HRA will consider those later tonight. But then later this year, we're planning to bring a more holistic look at our programs for consideration by the HRA to make sure that we are meeting the needs identified by the strategic plan in the best way that we can. We purchased 6525 Penn to assemble with our property at 6501 Penn, and we're now working with an affordable housing developer for plans for that site. Through a donation, we acquired another property along 494 and have assembled a very nice redevelopment parcel there. And our first LAHA sales tax money has started to come in. Again, that's about $230,000 for this year.
One question.
Yes?
So, first of all, kudos to the Section 8 staff. Yes. And that reminded me, in years past, sometimes it cost us more to administer the program than we were being reimbursed from the federal government. And I noticed that it said we were getting better reimbursements, but there was still a deficit. Is that just from a few years back and we haven't made it up yet? Or how do we get that fund back in balance?
Right. So HUD has done a better job of increasing our administration costs and paying for those. Last year, they did reimburse us. It did look like a deficit in our budget because the reimbursement comes after the end of the year, but they did reimburse us for those costs. This year in the budget, we planned for a deficit. We planned that the HRA General Fund would have to subsidize the administration of that program a little bit, but we do anticipate HUD coming in with additional admin funds, so we will not actually have to make that transfer from the general fund. So we've planned for it, but our hope is that we wouldn't need to subsidize that program. I think it's roughly $30,000.
That's good news. I'm glad that they're keeping up with things.
Okay, so moving back to some highlights, we're continuing to work on Astor Commons, 101 66th Street, and the Lindale Gardens site. Training, we've done a lot of staff training for HOTMA and Inspire V regulatory changes. Those are related to Section 8. It's some significant upgrades to the way that the program is administered and the way that inspections happen. HOTMA, if you are curious, stands for Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act. And Inspire V is National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, and it's for the voucher program, which is the V. Additional funding in 2024 for our Fix-Up Fund. There's been a lot of additional interest in our reduced interest rate fix-up loans because rates have been so much higher. Funds were used up early in 2024, so our revised budget adds additional funds for 4 to 5 more loans this year, and in 2025 we're proposing a budget of $40,000 for that program, up from $25,000. So again, trying to meet our families and residents where they're at and where the needs are the most dire at this time. And then it's exciting finally to have some loan repayments coming in that can be recycled into the community. So in 2024 and 25, we're using cash reserves to fund our housing rehab programs, taking some pressure off of that general fund and the levy. So we always cover our new work and our new goals, but I want to remind everyone of the other kind of business as usual work that continues alongside all of those new initiatives. Training, I mentioned that we had been fully staffed for most of the year, but as you have heard from me before, the city has a lot of newer staff. Our housing specialist position has turned over twice. Kate Aitchison moved upstairs, and now Brian has retired. So this is a very specialized position that involves a lot of training, and I'll say the same for the finance team. The work of the HRA is very complex, and there is a lot of time that is dedicated to making sure that our finance team understands all of the special rules that apply to HRA funds. Also continuing to provide rent assistance to approximately 325 households. That's through our Section 8 and Kids at Home program. Kids at Home technically is our EDA. Continuing to administer our single family programs, first time home buyer, new home, and Richfield Rediscovered, plus managing an extensive loan portfolio. We plan, organize, and run the annual remodeled home tour. We're continuing to provide funding for a variety of popular technical and financial remodeling assistance programs like the Home Energy Squad, Enhanced Program, the Architectural Consultation Program, CEE's Remodeling Advisor, and CEE's Fix-Up Fund Home Improvement Loans. And then finally, administering our 13 active tax increment districts. So looking ahead into 2025, we'll have a continued focus on training for our new employees and working with the finance department. We spent this year, our Section 8 staff spent this year training, and we will spend next year implementing those new HUD regulations. This year we are evaluating our programs. Next year we will be implementing any changes that the HRA directs. We're focusing on outreach, making sure that our housing programs are reaching our underserved communities and that those programs are accessible. In 2024, Minnesota Housing is trying to figure out what the rules are going to be for the state housing voucher program. That's the Bring It Home program that is listed in your budget document. Next year, we'll be looking to apply for our portion of those funds and get our own program up and running under those new rules. We're looking to evaluate and market our HRA-owned properties. That's in keeping with the direction of the strategic plan. Continuing to work with Beacon and JO companies to hopefully get some new and deeply affordable units in the community. We've adopted a spending plan for our pooled TIF, so now we're working to find projects that meet those goals. The high interest rates continue to make things challenging, but we have a number of irons in the fire right now. So hopefully we'll have some development and small business opportunities where we can get that money out into the community. So just a little bit of a summary, looking ahead, a lot of opportunities, Astor Commons, Penn Station, 77th Street, some really exciting development opportunities and sites to work on. There continue to be development challenges, however, increased construction and financing costs continue to have the development market be pretty slow. Interest rates are starting to come down, and so hopefully that will ease things up, but there continue to be bank financing challenges. There are a lot of new funding sources, which is exciting, but the challenges to development can make it harder to get that money actually out the door if projects aren't able to pencil out, even with our assistance. And then capacity issues. You know, there continue to be labor market challenges across all industries, but really across the entire spectrum of our work as the HRA. There are challenges in housing and redevelopment, in finance, in construction. It goes all the way down to property management and maintenance. So all of our partner organizations are having capacity challenges, and that makes it just that much more difficult for us to get our work done. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions? Wow. I have one question.
Yes.
The fund balance seems to hover around 3 million. Is that generally where we want it to be? Is that I think the state guidelines is about 50% of your expenditures, which that seems a little high, but maybe it's just the buckets that I'm not quite.
Yeah, so we have talked, we've talked with the finance department, we've reached out to our financial advisors to talk about whether or not that rule of thumb, which I believe is about 40% for the city of general fund expenditures, is also applicable to the HRA. There isn't really a rule of thumb for the HRA, like I said, our expenditures can vary so significantly that it just becomes more of a challenge. We do exceed that 40% for general fund expenditures. We do meet that rule of thumb.
Have there been projects that we didn't feel like we could fund because we didn't have the money to do them? Or do we feel like we are able to take all the opportunities good opportunities that we have, given the fund balance and kind of everything that we have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think philosophically, things have maybe shifted a little bit at the city and with the HRA. Historically, the HRA has been fairly conservative, and so we have built up some significant fund balances that I think now are allowing us to take advantage of opportunities that we wouldn't have been able to in the past. Whether or not the HRA wants to continue to be a little bit more aggressive with those opportunities is something that you'll have to consider as those opportunities arise.
I had a bunch of questions, and your packets answered all of them. So the additional supplemental packet as well as this. So fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to hear a little more about the plan for as the TIF districts decertify. So you're saying it looks like we're going to be able to cover it and we're not going to have to cut programming. Is that accurate?
Sure. So the money that comes in through the TIF districts both can fund staff time, a certain amount can fund staff time, and then a certain amount can go into our housing and redevelopment fund, which can be used to purchase blighted properties or help with housing needs throughout the community. So I think the funding challenge that we were anticipating was that as some of these larger TIF districts decertify, we were going to have a shortage of administrative funds to administer the programs, not necessarily fund the programming itself, but again, pay for the staff time to do that. Some of these newer TIF districts are generating more increment than we expected. Values, as you know, in the last few years have been significantly higher than we initially had projected for some of those districts. And so as of right now, it looks to me like we are in a good position to be able to continue to fund staff at the levels we are through the HRA rather than asking the city to chip in more.
Thank you, that's good to know.
John, did you?
One thing. Thank you for the very detailed presentation and the answers to the questions earlier in the email to me. I had a lot of questions when I reviewed this. It's my first time going through the budget process, so it was all a little foreign to me, so I appreciate the details. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last call for questions. Okay. Switch again. Wrong one. So that takes us to item number 2,
I move we approve the agenda.
approval of the agenda.
The minute-
Feels
meeting we
odd.
started a half hour ago.
So there's a motion for
Yes.
approval. Is there a second?
Second.
The agenda has been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I've made this on the city council side. It seems very weird to me that we don't put presentations after approval of the agenda, because in theory, what if the board wanted to move the presentation? I don't know. It's just like, they're always laid out like this, but I just find that bizarre always. Anyway,
Yeah, agree.
but as for this agenda, it's fine,
Yeah.
so.
As it pops up, it feels very awkward as we
Yeah.
get to approval. So next time, maybe we'll look at our bylaws and see how that gets laid out.
I think it's just the software they use, but I don't know.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. That takes us to item number 3, the consent calendar, and I'll hand it over to Executive Director Palin.
Yes, thank you. The consent calendar contains several items, again tonight only one single item, which are acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further HRA action on these items is necessary. However, the HRA commissioner, any HRA commissioner may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda for HRA discussion. Tonight, letter A, item A on your agenda, consent calendar, is consideration of the approval of revisions to the first-time homebuyer program guidelines. That concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded, and since there's the consent calendar, there's no need for discussion unless somebody wants to move it. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar is approved. All right, that takes us to item number 5, which is to consider the resolution approving the proposed 2025 proposed Housing Redevelopment Authority budget and tax levy. Anything to add?
No, I'll just note here that it, like I mentioned, it's a 3% proposed levy increase for 2025, and that impact to the average homeowner in Richfield would be approximately $38 per year.
And I know this is near, but I think it's worth saying, like, this is the max amount. If we decide we want to lower it, we can do so in 2 months.
That is correct. This sets the maximum amount. This amount will be certified with the state. The HRA could lower it at any time, but could not raise it for 2025.
All right, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to adopt the attached resolutions approving the 2025 proposed Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget and tax levy and the 2024 revised Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any last comments, questions, concerns? Yes, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say thank you for all the detailed explanations and the patience, because I know I peppered you with a lot of questions, and it sounds like others did as well, so thank you.
Happy to help.
Anyone else? All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It has been approved. Excellent. That takes us to item number 6, HRA discussion items. Is there any HRA discussion items? I do have a question. Are we planning on doing the redevelopment tour again that we did October 5th last year? Richfield Rediscovered?
Yes, the home tour?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and it is October 5th or 6th. I'm sorry, I will get that information out to you. I'll make sure I have that date. It's one of the two. Let me see. The 5th is the Saturday, I believe.
Just encourage my fellow managers to sign up and help volunteer. It's really great to be able to hear and talk to people and help out with that, so highly recommend. All right, if there's nothing else, item number 7, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the HRA had been introduced to our new city clerk, Michelle Friedrich. This is Michelle's first official HRA meeting, and so I wanted to point that out and welcome Michelle. She's been a great addition, and we're very happy to have her.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Welcome.
All right.
And that's all.
Excellent. That takes us to item number 8, claims. Is there a motion to approve claims?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Claims have been approved. That takes us to adjournment. Thanks, everyone. Everyone feeling good about rolling right over to the EDA? Okay. It is 7:36. I will call the meeting of the Economic Development Authority meeting of the City of Richfield, August 19th, 2024. We'll start with the open forum. So as always, each speaker is to keep their comment period to 3 minutes to allow sufficient time for others. Comments can be an opportunity to address the EDA. You can refer to the EDA agenda and minutes webpage for additional ways to submit comments. You may also call 612-861-9764 or email ldubois@richfieldmn.gov with questions. You can call into the open forum by dialing 1-415-655-0001 using webinar access code 2631-553-4069 with the password of 1234. Anybody calling in?
We have no callers.
Okay. That takes us to the approval of the minutes of the regular Economic Development Authority meeting of April 15th, 2024. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, changes? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting minutes have been approved. We will start with item number 1, the EDA budget presentation.
Thank you, President Rees-Daniels. And Michelle, if you could switch over to our presentation. Great, thank you. So now we're going to present the 2024 revised and 2025 proposed Economic Development Association budget. The mission of the EDA is to fund beneficial economic development, business assistance, and housing assistance programming. The EDA was formed in 2018 to fund programs related to those things. There are a few well-established programs funded by the EDA, Kids at Home and Transformation Loan, also our apartment remodeling program. But based on priorities identified by the Council, we've been working to build out a more robust offering of business assistance programming as well. Historically, the EDA did not have a dedicated staff, but was instead facilitated by help from several people spending small portions of their time on this work. That changed significantly in 2023 when we added the Economic Development Manager position, and it's continued to evolve as we work to meet the initiatives of the strategic plan, specifically focusing on a diversified tax base through business growth and a vital and exciting downtown. As more time is focused on those efforts, more staff time is also funded by the EDA, and you'll see that in the proposed budget. So similar to the HRA, the EDA budget can fluctuate significantly based on opportunities in the community and the market, and you'll see some of that in both the revised and proposed budgets. For 2024 revised, there's an increase of 17.6%. That's primarily program funding. $85,000 of that is an increase in the apartment remodeling loan program. $38,000 of that $85,000 is 2023 loans that have carried over, and $45,000 for additional loans because we have additional interested owners and have run out of money in the program. And we have found that the best way to maintain a program is to continuously have the funding available when you identify interested owners who are interested in participating. You will recall that we've turned that program over to CEE for administration, so there are administrative fees associated with that. In 2024, there'll be approximately $4,000, and then a little less in 2025. Once the program has been established, it's a little bit less to administer, so about $2,300 in 2025. There's also $20,000 in both the revised and proposed budgets for the new SAC assistance program. We're currently working toward our first possible award of that assistance with a new business over in the Lynn View. For 2025, there's a 7.7% increase over the 2024 adopted budget, but a drop from 2024, but a drop in 2025 proposed. Program funding is maintained at 2024 levels and continues to include $60,000 in small business assistance for a program that we're working on now. And there are significant increases in staff costs as we prioritize economic development work and more staff time is shifted to EDA. There's also $5,000 in matching funds included in this budget, and that's for a branding grant that we're hoping to receive from Hennepin County. It's a business district initiative grant from Hennepin County for up to $50,000, and that would help with branding in the downtown, and we'd like to take that step in 2025. The 2025 maximum levy is about $918,000. Our proposed levy increase is 4% or a $623,000 levy. The impact to the average homeowner in 2025 would be approximately $1.58.
Sure. I'm just curious, the grant you mentioned from Hennepin County, very excited that we're doing this, of course, but I was just curious what the ratio, like is 5,000 only enough to receive 5,000 or 10,000 total, or is it like a 1/5? Like it's not a one-to-one match that we need to provide, I assume.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we'd have to ask our economic development manager, Jan Youngquist, for the details on that. I believe we put some funds in there just to say that we had a match. I'm not sure that there's a percentage that's required.
Okay, I guess I just wouldn't want us to limit the amount of grant we can get because we only have 5,000 for our match.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So similar to the HRA, I've got this breakdown of funding sources and expenditures for the EDA. Taxes, again, this is the amount collected by the levy. The 4% levy increase is reflected in the proposed column. Miscellaneous revenues here are loan repayments, application fees, investment earnings. There's a significant increase for 2025, and that investment earning that's investment earnings, and finance recommended that we significantly bump that up to more accurately reflect what we've actually been making on our accounts. And they recommended just making that change for 2025. On the bottom half of this slide is what the EDA is spending money on. Staff, you can see what that 13% increase looks like. You know, the HRA budget is fairly small still, so that's an increase. A 13% increase is about $18,000. Admin here, that includes professional services like administering the loans with CEE, office supplies, and professional development. Things like rent, property insurance, those are picked up by the HRA, so you don't see those expenses on the EDA side. Programming, again, that's everything else. That's the money that we are programming and putting directly out into the community. So you'll see in 2024 and 2025, our expenditures are exceeding our revenues. This is indicating that the money we've been accumulating over these past years is starting to be spent and programmed into the community, and that was always our intent, to build up a fund that we could then make grants and loans that would be of a reasonable amount to business owners and homeowners. Additionally, I want to remind the group that we have the money in the temporary spending plan that could potentially be used for some of our business assistance programming, and we're looking to that money first. So although this budget looks like we're spending down fund balances, we might not need to do that. We might be able to tap our spending, our temporary spending plan. In 2023, we had also budgeted to spend into that fund balance, but because some of those apartment remodeling loans have spilled over into 2024, we didn't actually do that. So some of these things that we're projecting, you know, it's a budget, we're making some guesses, but we do have the fund balances to cover all of the expenditures that we've proposed. And that's why I wouldn't recommend any higher levy amount than the 4%. So 2024 highlights, what we've been working on here, what were some factors playing into the budget again. Our new SAC assistance program, as a reminder, a SAC credit is a sewer access charge that almost any new business coming into Richfield is going to need to pay. One SAC credit is about $2,500, and most new businesses are going to need several. So our SAC assistance program is helping new and expanding businesses with that cost of growth. We've taken an inventory of existing downtown businesses to try and evaluate some gaps. That's helping us to target our talks with potential businesses and who we'd like to see in our downtown. And then we'll be applying for those grant funds to initiate the branding strategy for downtown. And that's going to lead into additional work on the planning side in terms of potentially an overlay district and a small area plan in advance of our comprehensive plan, which is just a couple of years down the road. A couple of program notes, some takeaways. The Kids at Home program continues to be a strong and successful program. We're continuing to look for ways to connect with families in the Richfield schools to make sure that they know about this program. So working to make some connections with social workers and other folks over there at the schools. Continued high demand for our transformation home loan program. That program is part of our overall housing program evaluation that we're hoping to have completed again by the end of this year. Anecdotally, we have noticed that ADU builders aren't necessarily hearing about this program. So one of the conversations that we're having is how we're marketing that, and if we need to perhaps create specific marketing documents related to ADUs and this program. Our apartment remodeling program provides funding for the rehab of existing affordable rental units. We're having more success in fully utilizing those funds now, which is great. As I noted, we're proposing an increase for this year to make sure that we have funds available for some owners that we're in conversations with. Our energy efficient business grant has been very successful. We are starting to see a little downturn as most businesses have now been able to take advantage of that program. So we've left the funding constant for 2025, but we're tracking that and we may reallocate a portion of that money in coming years. Business development. In 2024, again, we launched that sewer access charge program. The market has been particularly tough for new businesses, but as interest rates ease up, we're hoping to offer this to more folks. And then Elevate Hennepin continues to be a great partner. They're providing many resources for new and growing businesses at no to low cost, and our contribution to that remains $5,000 annually. And that's it for EDA. Happy to answer any questions about this proposal.
So I don't have a question, I just have a comment. It's been really great to see the economic development and how all that part of the strategic plan, how it's coming into fruition and seeing all the different things that are happening. So thank you and to the staff for that.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. That takes us to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The agenda is approved. Item number 2, consent calendar. Executive Director Palmer?
Yes, thank you. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the EDA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further action on these items is necessary. Tonight, there is one item on the consent calendar for your consideration. It is consideration of an amended agreement with the Center for Energy and Environment, also known as CEE, to increase the budget for the apartment remodeling program. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Is anyone like something removed?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar has been approved. Taking us to item number 5, considering a resolution to approve the proposed property tax levy. Is there, nope, go ahead, Executive Director Gilman. Anything you want to add?
Nope, I will just remind you that at a 4% increased levy, that would be an impact of $1.58 for the average homeowner in 2025. And as we stated with the HRA, this is a maximum levy amount. The HRA could lower it from here later in the year, but could not raise the EDA levy.
All right, is there a motion? Let's see if there's any discussions.
I'll move to adopt the attached resolutions approving the 2025 proposed Economic Development Authority budget and tax levy and the 2024 revised Economic Development Authority budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. That takes us to item number 6, EDA discussion items. Any EDA discussion items? All right, seeing none, item number 7, Executive Director's Report.
I will confirm that the remodeled home tour is on Saturday, October 5th.
Thank you so much. Then that takes us to item number 8, claims. Is there a motion to approve claims?
I'll make a motion to approve claims.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Claims have been approved. That takes us to adjournment. Thank you, everyone.